Hello and welcome. I'm Katie, in case you don't know me yet, and I'm going to talk to you today about one of the most pivotal concepts related to balance, and that is the value of relationship. So when we talk about the truth about balance, when I do at least, it's impossible to not bring in the topic of relationship, because we in psychological opinion are not able to function fully in a balanced way without the support and the connection with other people. So today I'm going to talk about some of the dynamics, the different types of relating that we do, the types of relating that brings value, the type of relationship that takes value, and the type of relationship that does both. And then I'm going to show you a diagram that's going to help you understand how relationship really serves us in a number of different ways, especially in the types of relationship that both bring and take value. So take a moment here to just sort of look at the lay of the land for you when it comes to relationship. For those of us who get out of balance, we tend to either really overdo this area or really underdo this area. And that can look a number of different ways. But we tend to either really, really have a lot going on with a lot of different people. Maybe there are a lot of them, maybe there aren't that many of them, but we have a lot of connection going on. We spend a lot of our time being connected, and it's disconnecting feels like it's going to cause waves. Or we go in the other direction where we isolate, or we try to isolate, and we generally avoid connection, especially meaningful connection. By the way, women tend to do this type of overdoing, men tend to do this overdoing, and that's not necessarily the case for everybody. So just take a moment to take stock of what your relational landscape looks like. You may be in a marriage or a partnership, you may have children, or you may not. You may be close with family, or you may not. You may have a number of friendships. You may have just few friendships. You may have no friendships. You may mainly just connect with people in your work circle. There are lots and lots of different types of situations here. So just take a moment now to do stock, and feel free to write out a diagram. And you can put you in the center and then little lines out from you. With, like, say you're married, for instance, there's just a little short line between you and your spouse. And then there's like a longer line between you and, say, your sister, who you're not as close to, obviously, as your spouse, and just lines out from there to look at who you're connected to, what your relationships are like. That's really going to serve you. So I would pause this now if you're feeling like you want to do this all the way. Pause me now and write out or draw out that diagram so you can see your personal relationships right in a visual right in front of you. So pause me now. Okay, so now that you've gotten clear about what your relationship landscape looks like, you may already be noticing things, or you may not, either way. So I'm going to talk about different types of relationships, and I'm going to share my screen right now. try to get a slideshow going here. And so when we talk about balance, it's really important for us to look at what types of relationships take from us, really take our energy, and what types of relationships really give us energy. Because when we get out of balance, a lot of times we end up feeling depleted or lonely. So these 3 different types of relating, and most of us have all 3 of these, by the way. Most of us, but some people will have a really imbalanced thing going on here, which is why we're here. There's nothing wrong with that. You're in the right place. If you're imbalanced, you're in the absolute right place. So there are 3 main types. The first type is dependent. The second type is independent. And the third type is interdependent. And I'm going to go a little more deeply into each now. So I'm going to start with a dependent relationship. This is a relationship that generally takes from us. And if you're a parent, there's the type of relationship that you have with your child, more so when they're younger than when they're older, tends to be more of a dependent sort of relationship. That does not mean that it doesn't give back. It just means that it mostly takes from you, right? That little creature relies on you for their survival less and less as they get older, but they still rely on you for their survival. And in so doing, you're going to watch them grow in certain ways. You're going to be very proud of them at times. You're going to connect with them in ways that's very nourishing to you. And you don't go to them for support, for help, the way that you would go to, say, your sibling or your friend or your parent, right? So in a dependent twosome, one person takes the role of the caretaker or the enabler. And when you look at a relationship between 2 adults, it's more of that enabling, because adults are generally of the same capacity. So if one is taking the role of the caretaker and one is taking the role of caretaking long term, not like, oh, your friend went to go get surgery and you're just helping them out for the day or the week, right? That's just a short-term thing. I'm talking about a chronic general dynamic where one person is dependent and the other person is a caretaker. That is an enabling type of relationship. So because you're not allowing that person to do I shouldn't say you're not allowing. You are, instead of giving that person the opportunity to really have to do for themselves, you're offering it for them. Even if they're asking you or begging you or bribing you, you are saying yes. So just going to shoot it to you straight. And so the second person is dependent, or they tend to be disempowered. And children generally just do feel disempowered, by the way. They're very clear about the fact that they're not functioning on their own, and it becomes more troubling as they get older, and then they begin to function on their own. So in this dependent sort of relationship, one person, as the diagram shows, one person is really sort of pulling the other along. It takes a lot of energy, and it's okay if we have some of these relationships in our lives, especially if they're children. And the important part is that we balance those out, and we engage in those only when we have it to give. Okay, so the next type of relationship is the polar opposite of what we just looked at. It is independent. And this is really looking at sort of like in this picture, we're looking at a group and then a person who's sort of separate from the group, but it gives you the idea. Independence is emotionally isolating, denying support or assistance from others. It's denying any support or assistance that others might offer. And when I say that, I don't just mean like people are coming to you offering something and you're saying no. I mean, if you really need emotional help or you're going through something hard, you don't reach out for therapy. You're not going to do that. You're a no to that, right? That is an independent sort of move. And then claiming self-sufficiency. Self-sufficient is a really good term for the independent type of relationship. And we may go through times in our lives where we're fiercely independent. Or we may have certain twosomes in our lives where we're two people, we don't rely on each other for anything important. We're just kind of there. Okay. This is an interesting dynamic because it's usually meant to conserve energy. And while that's true, we can conserve energy that we're not giving to other people. We're not receiving energy from other people either. So we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to get an important, nourishing support and connection with other people, which we do need as human beings. We do need connection. That's a basic human need. Okay, and so the most nourishing type of relationship is an interdependent relationship. And no matter what, no matter where you are, having a relationship like this is really, really important. Really, really important. And we may go through times in our lives where we don't have someone in our life who's like this, but if we don't, we should be looking. We should really be trying to cultivate this with somebody else. So I'll just read this because it's so cute. Interdependence is the relationship between two or more living things where each one benefits from the other. So it's a mutually beneficial connection. And on a team of people, this cool little graphic shows that each person is bringing something unique, and it's an important piece. Each person is bringing a piece, though. I don't know if this is going to work. Hopefully this will work. So this is a cool diagram. It's just looking at you. It's looking at as an individual what you're receiving from an interdependent sort of situation, or when you're in an interdependent state of mind, what's going on. And it means that you're equally balanced between self-interest and the interest of others. This is the true definition of balance. We are caring for ourselves, but we also are leaving some reserves to care for others. And in so doing, we're going to get caring from others. So now, having gone through these different types of relating, I want you to go back to your diagram, or if you're just doing it in your head, that's good too. Or if you just want to start your diagram now, go for it. So here, what I want you to do is go back to each of these relationships that you're looking at and write in what dynamic it tends to take. Is it a dependent relationship? And who's dependent? You could put D for dependent, C for caretaker for that one. You may be the dependent one. The other person may be the dependent one. And which of them might be independent, where you're not really giving or taking either way from each other. You're just live and let live sort of boundaries. And then which relationships are interdependent, where you count on each other's strengths in order to balance each other out. You count on each other and you both bring something. So take a moment to fill that in. Pause me now. Okay, so I want to take a moment to say none of these types of relationships are bad. Interdependent types of relationships are somewhat ideal. And I think it's important as adults that we have some, not just as adults, even as kids. It's important that as human beings, we have some, especially one, at least one. and the ones closest to you. That is sort of like an important factor to look at this diagram and see what the closest people to you, are you relating to them? What sorts of relationships do you have? Are they dependent on you? Are you dependent on them? Are you independent from each other? Are you interdependent? What do those look like? One of the things that we can do that's really helpful for us when we're trying to strike balance through boundaries, which will be another, if you haven't seen that yet, it's here as well. Boundaries are important to set. And basically, if you're finding that a lot of these relationships are dependent and you're the caretaker and you want to work on getting more balanced, really what you want to do is stretch out those lines so that those people are not as close to you. They're not relying on you as much. You're taking space and saying, I need you to take care of yourself. I can't be available to you like I have been. I need to become less available to you for the things that you need, so that you either do it yourself or you get it from someone else. If they literally are someone who needs care, like an elderly person, maybe it's even a parent, it is okay if you don't have that to give. You do what's right in your conscience, and you got to get help and support so that you are in your own range. You're taking care of yourself today, right now, your life now. We can make that line longer without totally disconnecting. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about a really cool concept, and I learned this many years ago in my early career, and I use it all the time whenever I can, and I think it's a beautiful illustration of how important relationships are to personal health, how we really benefit from having close, meaningful relationships. And the diagram is called Johari window. And this is the three-dimensional diagram of it, but you can look at it. The concept of it doesn't need to be three-dimensional. It's just this four-quadrant type of diagram. So I'll just give you a moment to kind of drink in what's going on here, and I'll explain it to you. So this is a house. It's a structure. Maybe it's a house, maybe whatever. It's a structure with rooms in it. The rooms have windows in them. Some of them do. Most of them do. And then outside the structure, on one wall is you. You can see in a couple of those windows. On the other wall is others. They can see in those windows. And you notice those two, you and others, can see each other through that corner room. Okay. So in this structure, an important thing to understand about this structure is that it contains you. Everything in your existence lives in this building. And we're going to divide it. I'm going to show you how it divides itself, what's in each room. But generally, it's about awareness and consciousness. So that depends on, that determines what is in what room. Okay. So if you're confused, that is totally okay. I'm going to explain. You're going to get it in a minute. All right. So this is your life in the structure. This is you. And in room one, what you notice is that it's a corner room. It's a corner, and it has windows on each corner. on each wall, outside wall. And you can see in it, and other people can see in it. So this is what we call your public self. This is your public room. This is your stuff that you are willing and able to see yourself, and you're willing and able to show to others. Okay? And the concept of others here can change, right? When we're at work, that window, you know, what's in this room will be different. What that window will show is different than if you are just alone with your spouse or with your best friend or with somebody who you're very close with, right? So, or if you're in at a business conference with nobody you know, what's going to be in this room, what you're willing to show to others, what you're willing to put in this room because it's visible to others, maybe very little. Maybe what your name is, what your position is, and what you do at your job, and maybe like a general, you're married, or you have 2 kids, you like basketball games. Okay, so this room, depending on where you are, is going to have different amounts in it. This is your public self. So in order for you to have this interdependence that you need, in order for you to have the connection that you really need so you can be fully known and fully supported, there should be at least a few places in your life, places or people, where you really feel in your element. The place where I first started to show this to people was when I worked at a rehabilitation facility for people who were recently sober from some sort of addiction. And for many of those people now, and even then, the group room where they're doing group therapy or where they're doing 12-step programs is a room where they really put a lot of information in here. They open up. And it is a very nourishing experience for people to have some kind of a forum, especially a public forum where there's a group of people where you open up and they get to know you and they get to reflect. They can tell you what they see and you can show them who you are. Okay, so this room 1 is your public self. Now I want you to pause me and I want you to write down either people or situations where you really feel like you can put almost everything that you got, almost all of who you are, into this room where other people can see you. You really feel like you can fully be yourself. You really feel like you can share. Maybe it's at the dinner table with your family. Maybe it's talking to your parents. Maybe it's talking to your pastor. Maybe it's talking to your spouse, your best friend, your brother, wherever it is. I want you to write down, hopefully you have at least 3 places. If you don't have 3 places, then I want you to write down 3 places where you want to become more public who you are. So pause me now and write that down. Okay, let's move on to room 2. So what you'll notice about room 2 is that you cannot see in there. It is not visible to you. This is the magic. This is the absolute epitome of why we cannot have true balance without being deeply connected to other people. We have to have people hanging out outside this room on a regular basis in order to see certain parts of us that we cannot see ourselves. And this is where that adage came from. You cannot see the forest from the trees. You can't see what the forest looks like if you're in the middle of the trees. You got to get back, zoom out, be back away where you can actually look at the landscape. You can actually look at the forest. Otherwise, you're in it. We can't see the same thing. We can't see the same perspective. So we need other people to tell us, oh, you know, you talk a lot, right? Or it seems like you've been shut down and haven't been really speaking up or saying what's going on for you for a few months now, and it feels like something's going on. And we may not have even noticed that. We may not have seen that we shut down. So it may be great. It may be things that we do need to know about ourselves. It may be great things like you are an excellent communicator. When you just get that point across, when you get to the point, I totally get it. I learned so much from you. It could be compliments and it could be criticisms. And both of them are valuable in their own ways. It's important that we have people to give us both. Kindly, not abusively. Abuse is never okay. If we have people in our lives who can tell us the truth in a gentle manner, especially if our partner or spouse, whatever, can speak to us and give us criticism or feedback in a loving way, we hit the jackpot on that one. It's so important. We want to know the truth. Okay, so room 2 means that people tell us what we cannot see for ourselves, and we trust them too. We trust their opinions. Sometimes people tell us something they see and we're like, you're a baddie, I don't even know what you're talking about. And that just means we're not compatible. We don't see things the same way and we don't really want to. That's okay. If it doesn't feel right to you, you don't trust that person in that way. So here we really want to look at people in your life who will tell you the truth, or if you told them, I want you to tell me the truth, you could trust them that their truth is valuable to you. So now I want you to write down hopefully 3 people in your life who you can trust to give you the truth about what they see with you. So pause me now if you need to. Okay. Room 3. Here's the heavy stuff. Try not to get lost in this one. It's an easy one to get lost in because it's a concept that we cannot really wrap our brains around because, well, look at room 3. No windows. There's no real entryway into room 3. It is what is psychologically known as the unconscious, which means we're not conscious of it, which means we don't know it's really there. We may know that we know we don't know what's there. For instance, many years ago, my mom got into a car accident and it was pretty bad. She wasn't majorly injured for a long period of time, but it was pretty bad. So basically what happened for her is she went amnesia kind of. She remembered, when she looks back at the accident, she remembered right before the crash, the impact. And then a little while after she came to and the hospital. So her system, this, by the way, if we go into a state of trauma, like shock, which means that our body is in a state of trauma, we will lock things away in this room because we're overwhelmed and we can't take in any more information. So our brains are amazing in this way. They basically have this shutdown mode where they stop. It's sort of like the record button stops being pressed, although sometimes we can go back and retrieve it. Sometimes it ends up being retrievable, sometimes it's not. My mom's never remembered what happened in that accident. She can't have it back in her memory. Sometimes we can access it again later. Sometimes we cannot. It stays in this room. So we may know that we don't know it, like we may know that it happened and we forgot it, but otherwise we don't know what's in here. If other people somebody sees you sleepwalking and you go into the kitchen and you toast yourself a bagel, and right? It's unconscious to you that happened, but they saw it. right? Working with people who have drug and alcohol problems, some people can be in a blackout state of intoxication and they're doing things, they're saying things, and other people are around to witness it, but that person probably will never remember it. So this is the stuff locked in the unconscious room. The more that we heal, the more that we work on ourselves, and especially the more we work on our self-esteem and our self-love, self-care, the more we'll feel safe to come out of this room where we have trauma. Everybody has trauma. And I'm not talking about like combat. I'm talking about subtle trauma. That's how I use that term. Some people use that term like, you know, major things happening, like being attacked or being robbed or being shot at. I don't believe that trauma has to be that dramatic or that severe. When we have needs that are not fulfilled, we can experience trauma. So the more that we heal, the more we get to know ourselves, the more we really look at ourselves both honestly and lovingly and accept who we are, really accept who we are, the more it is going to feel safe to come out of this room, either into room 2 or room 4. So for this room, you're like, what do I write down for this room? And I will tell you what to write down for this room. What are your sources of healing? What do you do for to grow as a person? And I'll give you some examples. Some people may go to a therapist. Some people may go to church or a church counselor. You may do a 12-step program. You may do another sort of personal growth and development program. You may be working on a workbook. You may be reading a book. You may follow Eckhart Tolle or Byron Katie or, you know, Deepak Chopra, right? Like, what do you use for healing? And if I ask you this question and you say nothing, there's nothing, I might recommend that you try something. If you want to. If you don't, that is okay. Okay. So if there are 3 ways here, go for 3. Heck, go for 5. But if you just have 1 or 2, that's okay. Okay. Pause me if you need to here. I'm going to go on to room 4. Room 4 is an interesting room. It's a little room I like to call secrets. So you can see what's in here. It's not unconscious. It's just not open to the public. Back there in that back room where people can't see it. And secrets are sometimes secrets for a very good reason. There are certain people who don't need to know our secrets. Like grandma doesn't need to know about your sex life, right? And it is really healing and somewhat emotionally, psychologically important that somebody knows, not just one person, but for each secret, somebody knows it. We've shared it with somebody and they have been loving and approving back, not shaming or disapproving. That makes it worse. It's important that the things that we hold as secrets have been shared and somebody has looked back at us and said, either me too, or wow, you know, that's a lot. And I still love you. I'm still your friend. How can I help you? Or I'm so glad you told me this, right? So for those of us who've had bad experiences with sharing personal information with other people, if we have shared something with just say one other person and they've given us like some sort of shameful response, we really probably would benefit from telling somebody else who's going to be more loving. And by the way, this is what clergy people do. They hear secrets. It's their job. And they're a little bit more capable of hearing anything than, say, a therapist is. Therapists can't hear necessarily, if you tell them certain things, they have to report them, like child abuse. But therapists are also great for that. Therapists are really good. I can't say how many times as a therapist I've been the first person that somebody's told something very private to them. And sometimes I hear it and I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you've been holding that in. Like 50% of people have also experienced that. And you've been thinking you're so weird all this time. And like, I wouldn't tell them, but maybe that's true for me. And that's true for so many people that I know personally, right? Because you get to know so many people personally as a therapist. And so it's, you know, I can't say how many times people have shared something and you can just feel it empathically when somebody gets something out that they've been holding in. Like the secrets in this room are festering. It's a stinky room. They're festering, and the longer they stay in there, the stinkier they get to you. But really, if you bring them out into the light, the fresh air, they don't smell anymore. They just couldn't get any air in there. To other people, they're like, oh yeah, that's not a big deal. That's normal, you know? And so, so room 4, really this room, we do have to put things in there in some forums, right? In some places, we do want to have secrets at work. We don't want our professional colleagues to know all our stuff. But we do want our partner to know a lot of our stuff, maybe all of our stuff, just depending on how much we're open to sharing. Going back to the 12-step program, one of the steps, or really two of the steps 4 and 5, are really related to putting all of our stuff down on paper. You know, the important things that have happened in our lives, and then sharing it with our sponsor, who just holds space. And a lot of times the sponsor say, me too, or I know many people, I know others who have experienced that. So for this one, I want you to write down a few people in your life who you would trust to really hear secrets, especially if you have a secret. I'm not telling you to go tell it right now. You have to do that on your own, on the time frame that feels right to you. What I'm asking here is for you to write down a few people who could potentially hear your secrets, or one of your secrets. Who do you trust? Who do you want to know your secrets? Your deepest, darkest stuff. All right. So I hope that you've gotten from this topic what I have intended for you to take from it. And please ask any questions. I hope that this brings an invitation for you to cultivate the types of relationships that are really bringing in value and striking balance in your lives. So, wishing you balance, and I hope to see you very soon.